Hello, family and friends. Thanks for joining me as I continue to study the Igbo language of Southeast Nigeria, the ancestral tongue on my mother's side of the family. I've started learning a new module which is related to school and all the items related to going to school. I believe that's one of the main things that you have to know and would come up in a lot of conversation pieces. So it's crucial if you want to be fluent in the language to know about school and things related to schooling. Have quite a bit that I've studied so far, but I'm only going to present the first 25 items here. And if you're native speaking of the Igbo, again, as always, I accept your correction, your encouragement, all of these things as I'm trying to become fluent in the language. Right now, I'm about 11 months of study so far, so just a little under that. So I still consider myself very much a novice at this, very much a beginner. But I will be able at some point, the Lord let me live, to be able to be fluent in the language. So I know that time is of the essence for many of you, and thank you for taking this time to learn this language with me. Again, the Igbo people are one of the main people that were brought to the Americas, so most African Americans like myself have some degree of Igbo blood in us, as the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Fula, and others from the Biafra, also known as modern day Nigeria, are literally our ancestors and the majority of our ancestry, though we do come from other tribes in West Africa. So I give the Igbo a lot of credit, and of course just continue to learn the language and the culture to reunite both us here in America as well as those in the fatherland of Nigeria from a Pan-Africanist mindset. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. Again, as I mentioned, just going to go over the topic of school in the Igbo language of Nigeria. And of course, in order to say school, you would say Oh-Lau Ah Kwoe-Kwau. And that means house of books. Let me say that one more time as we actually go to the actual slide in relation to that. So again, just to go a little bit slower, school building comes from two words, Ola, which means house, and Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, which means books. So literally you're saying house of books, which in English translates to school or school building more properly. So again, you would pronounce it Oh-Lau Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, school. Oh-Lau Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, school. Arithmetic or math, one of my favorite subjects throughout school, and even today I like to do a little bit of math. It would be three words that you would use in order to say arithmetic or math. In Igbo, it will be mgbako Nah Um-Way-Poe. Again, I'll say a little bit slower. Mgbako Nah Um-Way-Poe, which means arithmetic, or better known as math in the U.S. And that's broken down in the literal translation, mgbako, which means adding, na means and mwepụ means subtraction. So you're literally saying adding and subtracting. In other words, arithmetic, meaning math in the U.S. So mgbako Nah Um-Way-Poe is arithmetic. Okay, for an assignment, and it can also mean homework, is the same wording for it. Two words that you would use to say assignment in Igbo, it would be Ihe omume. Ihe omume, assignment. Again, it comes from two words, Ihe, that first word, which means item, and omume means practice. So you're saying an item used for practice, and that means an assignment or a lesson or homework. All of these things are the same word. So again, it's Ihe omume, assignment. Ihe omume, assignment. Atlas looks like an adaptation of an English word. So it sounds a lot like the English word. So it's atịlasị, atịlasị, atlas. And remember, it's a tone language. So that letter that looks like an I with a dot underneath it, we call that a diacritic. And it means to go up in tone. Okay, it sounds like an E, but it's like a really high E. It's like, so remember what I'm saying here is atịlasị. Atịlasị. So it's atịlasị. Atịlasị for atlas. Okay. Backpack is a combination of two words. Just like it is in English, it's just kind of run together. It means back and pack, you know, in English, but we make it into one word as backpack. So a pack for the back in English. It's the same thing for Igbo. You would say in Igbo, Apa-Zoe, Apa-Zoe for backpack. And that breaks down as follows. Apa, that means bag, and or container actually. It could mean bag as well, you know, depending on how you use it. But I'll just keep it simple. It means container in our case, and Ah-Zoe means back. So what you're literally saying is container for the back, meaning a backpack, a container for books for your back. So it's Apa-Zoe backpack. Again, Apa-Zoe backpack. Okay, Blackboard. And again, remember in Igbo, just like a lot of other languages outside of English, the subject comes first and then the adjective or the descriptive word. So basically, in order to say blackboard, you would say board black in Igbo as you would in Spanish and other languages. It seems like English is the one that's kind of different, that puts the adjective before the subject. We're kind of different in the English tongue than a lot of the rest of the world. So again, in order to say blackboard, when it comes to Igbo, you would say Bau-Doe Oh-Gee, Bau-Doe Oh-Gee, blackboard. So again, you're saying Bau-Doe, which is board, and Oh-Gee means black. So Bau-Doe Oh-Gee, blackboard. You're saying board black, meaning blackboard. Bau-Doe Oh-Gee, blackboard. Our book, you've already been introduced to this word before, because remember, Oh-Lau Ah-Kwoe-Kwau was for house of books, meaning school. So just to say book, you would just use that second word. Ah-Kwoe-Kwau is book. Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, book. Okay. Now backpack we already had. Apa-Zoe, but you can also say book bag, which seems similar as well for carrying books. Just like we have different words in English to describe the same thing, you can do the same thing in Igbo. So book bag would be Apa-Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, Apa-Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, book bag. And again, what you're saying is Apa, in this case, means bag, and Ah-Kwoe-Kwau means book. So you're saying bag for books or book bag in English. So Apa-Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, book bag. Okay, bookshelf. Now this is one in the Igbo language that you actually have to drop a vowel. A lot of times in Igbo, where you have two words, you have to drop one of the vowels to pronounce it correctly. It's the same thing as we do in English when you have contractions. Remember, in contractions, we don't always say do not, we say don't. In order to get to be able to say don't, you have to get rid of some letters in there to pronounce it correctly. So it's the same thing in Igbo. It's almost like putting two words together is like a contraction in English. You're going to drop some letters. So in this case, you're going to drop the A in Ah-Kwoe-Kwau. So it's going to say, you're going to say it this way. Shale-Foe Kwoe-Kwau, bookshelf. Instead of Shale-Foe Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, you take off a vowel, so it's Shale-Foe Kwoe-Kwau, bookshelf. And from what I'm understanding from my studies so far, if you say Shale-Foe Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, people will still understand you anyway. But it sounds like the common way of saying this, Shale-Foe Kwoe-Kwau, bookshelf. So again, it's almost exactly like it sounds. In literal translation, it's Shale-Foe, which is shelf, and Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, books. So you're saying shelf for books or bookshelf. So again, it's Shale-Foe Kwoe-Kwau, bookshelf. All right, bookmark. Again, you're putting the subject and then the description, meaning the adjective, after the fact, just like other languages. Igbo does the same, as you know. So you're saying mark for book in order to say bookmark. So that would be sound. That would sound as the following: Akara Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, bookmark. So again, that's Akara, which is mark, and Ah-Kwoe-Kwau means book. So you're saying mark for book. So again, put it together. You're saying Akara Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, bookmark. Akara Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, bookmark. A calculator, as we're about halfway through, is two words: ihe mgbaka, ihe mgbaka, which is calculator. It comes from two words: ihe, which means item, and mgbaka, which means to calculate. So an item used to calculate is called a calculator in English. So it's ihe mgbaka, calculator. Again, ihe mgbaka, calculator. Calendar looks like an adaptation of an English word, so it sounds very similar. It says, it would be pronounced, I should say, as calenda, calendar. Calenda, calendar. Again, calenda, calendar. Chalk is pretty simple. It's inzu for chalk. Inzu, chalk. Okay, we already talked about Bau-Doe Oh-Gee, which was Blackboard. So now we're going to say Chalkboard instead. So Chalkboard would be Bau-Doe Inzu. So you're putting board and chalk together. So again, Bau-Doe is board and Inzu is chalk. So you're saying board for chalk. In English, that would be chalkboard. So it's Bau-Doe Inzu, chalkboard. Again, Bau-Doe Inzu, chalkboard. Okay, chart is an adaptation from the original English word. That's what it looks like to me. So for chart, you would say chati, chati for chart. So again, that's chati for chart. Okay, I was never this gentleman in class because I was too scared in my day to get the paddle. Because in my day, the teachers gave you the paddle if you were the class clown. So I never did those type of things. But every classroom has a class clown. And in order to say that class clown in Igbo, you do have to drop a few of the letters. Because again, you're putting a whole bunch of words together. And when two words come together, you drop some of those to pronounce it correctly. So you would have Amehachi Klasim for class clown. That's Amihachi Klasim, class clown. And that comes from the root words Ami Ihe. Ami Ihe. Well, let me say it correctly, actually. Amihachi, that means clown. And Klasim means class. So what you're saying is clown in my class, or comic in my class. So that makes that person the class clown. So it's Amihachi Klasim. Again, that's Amihachi Klasim, class clown. Okay. Classmate is just a combination of two words in Igbo. Y, which is that NWA word, which looks like NWA in English. That's not the pronunciation of the word, the letters in Igbo, but it just makes it easy to explain it that way. But it's Y, almost like that N is silent. And Klasim, which you've already had earlier. So Klasim. So what you're saying is, in literal terms, you're saying Y, which means child, and Klasim means my class. So you're saying child in my class, which is my classmate. So it's Y Klasim, classmate. Y Klasim, classmate. You may even hear some people say in Y Klasim, or you may hear someone say Unwa Klasim. but it all means the same thing. So you'll hear different people, kind of like we are in the United States. People from the state of Georgia do not sound like the people that are from the state of Alabama, and don't sound like the people from Mississippi. So in Igbo, you have 5 different states in Nigeria, so people are going to pronounce things a different way. They have a little bit different accents as well as dialects, but all accepted. And for the most part, I try to learn Central Igbo, which would mean almost like we say in the United States, proper English, meaning the English that everybody would understand. That's what Central Igbo is among the Igbo-speaking people of the world. So I'm just going to go with the pronunciation again for classmate as Wa-Klasim, classmate. Wa-Klasim, classmate. All right, you keep seeing the same words. You get a lot of repetition in learning, which is okay because it keeps you in the mind of learning, because repetition creates learning. So for classroom, you would say classy, classy for classroom, classy, classroom. Now, you've been hearing me saying it classim earlier. That's just the only difference between classy and classim is one means my class and one means just class in general. So class in general means classy. But my class, you add the M at the end, which means classim, okay? Almost like in English, you would say class for general, or you would say my class. You add a little bit to it to take possession of the class. Same thing with Igbo, you know, just a different way of doing it, but it's the same concept. So again, in Igbo, just general, talking about classroom, you would say classy. But if you're saying my class, you would say classim. So again, classy, classroom. Okay. Again, we keep looking at modifications of the word Bau-Doe, Bau-Doe, which is board. In this case, we're talking about clipboard. So you would say Bau-Doe Clipo, clipboard. Bau-Doe Clipo, clipboard. So again, you're breaking it down literally to understand it. It's Bau-Doe, which is board, and Clipo, which means clip. So board, that's a clip or clipboard. So Bau-Doe Clipo, clipboard. Okay, coach is Inchikwa, Inchikwa, coach. So just one word in this case, Inchikwa, coach. Okay. All right. Colored pencils, which you'll find in schools everywhere around the world. You're going to drop what I call the second E in nwere, which is the middle word in this 3-word concept for colored pencils. And you'll see how I say it in a minute then. So it will be pensolo nwerocha for colored pencils. You know, basically, if you pronounce all the words, it would be pensolo nwere ocha. But again, you're running nwere and ocha together, and you're taking out that last E. So that's why it sounds different. So to say colored pencils, then you would say pensolo nwerocha. It's colored pencils, which comes from the words pensolo, which is pencil, nwere, meaning possessing, and ocha, meaning color. So really what you're saying is pencils possessing color. That means colored pencils. So again, I will pronounce it as pensolo nwerocha, colored pencils. Okay, the old school apparatus to draw perfect circles, a compass. It's very similar in Igbo. It would be compass, compass for compass. Oh, compass, compass. Okay, last two. Computer is very similar. It would be computa for computer. Computa for computer. Actually, it's one after this one. Let me count correctly. Composition books, where we had to write essays. You would say akwụkwọ de mede for composition book. Now, it comes from the root words akwụkwọ, which you understand already means book, and in some cases you can say paper, but to keep it Simple, we're going to say book. So Ah-Kwoe-Kwau is book, and Ede-Mayde means essay. So you're basically saying, literally, books for writing essays. Or in other words, in the U.S., we would call that composition book. But again, in Igbo, since you got two verbs coming together from two different words, you drop one. In this case, you drop the E in Ede-Mayde. Okay? So it becomes Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-De-Mayde for composition book. Again, Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-De-Mayde, composition book. Okay, last one, and we're complete. Construction paper. Remember I was saying that Ah-Kwoe-Kwau can be used for the word book, and it can also be used for paper. So it just depends on the context of your conversation. So in order to say construction paper, you would say Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-Mwepụ. Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-Mwepụ, which is construction paper, comes from the root words Ah-Kwoe-Kwau, which again in this case means paper, and Mwepụ, which means construction. So you're saying paper for construction, or construction paper in English. So it's Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-Mwepụ. Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-Mwepụ. Let me say it right because I said it incorrectly. It's Ah-Kwoe-Kwau-Mwepụ, which is construction paper. So again, thank you for joining me. I'm going to stop here at the first 25 items here and make another video next week if the good Lord sees fit, and just continue on this journey of learning the Igbo language, my ancestral tongue. Again, I'm not a teacher, I'm a student. So if you're fluent in the language, feel free to correct me as I take corrections, and hopefully we can have a conversation without any English at all, and we both be fluent in the Igbo language of Nigeria, again, our ancestral tongue for many of us in the United States that are of African American stock. All right, take care, God bless, and we'll talk to you on the next occasion. The good Lord sees fit. Have a good night. Bye-bye.